The London Brent crude, one of the world's top oil benchmark, fell below the $60 handle at the weekend. Well, no thanks to OPEC Plus' decision to ramp up market supply by 411,000 by the month of June. That's resulted in lower oil price forecasts by at least two of the world's biggest banks, Barclays and Standard Chartered. In the meantime, the new $5 billion Africa Energy Bank, to be headquartered in Abuja, Nigeria, has advertised for the position of the president and CEO of the specialized agency. I'm going to be asking my guest on the show, Ayuk, the executive chairman of the African Energy Chamber, if he's interested in leading the African Energy Bank as its pioneer president. Great to have you on the show tonight, as always, NJ.
Thank you for having me.
Now, hold on your answer on that question. It's going to be my parting shot later, if you're interested in the African Energy Bank CEO position. But what do you make of the global oil market and the barrel of oil right now, taking a cue from OPEC Plus' weekend decision?
I think OPEC has done a very good decision that has to deal with market stability. You have to look at, there had been constant, there's been, to put it very clear, there's been a lot of cheating. You've seen a lot of oversupply coming from Iraq and from Kazakhstan, and that has been a problem. So now what they're trying to do is to compensate countries like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Algeria, and others that have been victims of an oversupply and also cheating in that market. So they are actually doing more to stabilize oil market. It looks like it's going to be painful, but it's going to ease itself in the long run. We also have to pay attention to inventories, and you have to look at that. Now, when it comes to sub-Saharan Africa, of course, when we see Brent crude prices going below $60, it hurts because a lot of our budgets have been put around $70. So anything that gets below $70, it really hurts on how we are going to look at our economies, and that is a problem.
And you just touching on that very important point. What lower oil prices would mean for African major exporters like Nigeria, Angola, even Ghana, that depends on higher oil prices for a chunk of their revenue?
It is going to hurt African countries, African producers. I tell you, when you look at when companies are looking at making investments into many African, whether it is field development or gas or new exploration, they do pay attention to the markets, they do pay attention to the oil prices, and they do benchmark sometimes around $60. So anything less than that becomes very difficult. But for governments that are already seeing a big strain in demands coming from citizens, infrastructure projects, healthcare, and all of that, that need the dollars to come in to really drive that. So when you see a big decrease in oil price, that hurts them, and they have to get right back to the drawing board. That comes also with the sense that we need to be very responsible and not have an over-reliance on oil as part of our foreign exchange earnings. We need to diversify our markets, and this is one of the reasons why it's really important that we have a diversified economy so we can deal with the shocks when we find ourselves in these situations.
This is a very interesting conversation where we talk about energy and energy independence and all of that. You're always on the road, NJ, preaching the gospel of drill, baby, drill. Did that get you into some hot waters in Portugal recently?
It did. I feel vindicated. I was right. I had a big debate with the former Portuguese environment and energy transition minister. President was there, really nice guy, listened to us carefully. But you know what? The guy was angry, but I was on point because I had to talk about my realities in Africa, and they want to talk about their renewable energy and all of that. But what happened to their renewables? The grid shut down, and it happened because the intermittent nature of solar and wind is still a problem. You need to be able to have power generation that gives you that base load that would withstand any kind of shocks on the grid. And that's just what happens there. And it didn't take so long for that to happen. I feel vindicated. I think an over-reliance on, the sun wouldn't shine forever. The wind wouldn't blow it forever. You might need natural gas for a long time to keep us going, and we have to get a just and orderly transition. We're not against a transition. It has to be just and orderly. It can't be that we should stop. And in Portugal, I had to defend Africa's right to drill. It is very important that when we get into these places, we have to speak truth to power sometimes. It might not be very comfortable, but Africa has every right to produce every drop of hydrocarbons it can find so that it can get its people out of poverty. It can really improve healthcare, and we can build for ourselves what we expect the others to do for us so that we don't have to rely on aid. And that was the message in Portugal, and I don't apologize for it.
So beyond the noise, NJ, what is the reality of a global energy transition, going by the recent massive power outages in Spain and Portugal? Are you talking about that? We look at South Africa, for example, with the whole dependence on Eskom over time. For South Africa is now doing a whole lot in terms of renewable. Kenya has about 95%, 95% of its energy on renewable. So do you think there's a little bit of a problem if we onboard everything on solar, on wind energy, and just think that we don't need nat gas, we don't need we don't need fossil fuel anymore, we don't need gas?
No, there is going to be a problem. Here is why. Renewables are intermittent. You can have intermittent energy. Sometimes you get 100 megawatts performing at 35 megawatts. That becomes very expensive because you're spending too more to get very low. The second part you have to really look at when you look at energy systems, you have to look at the keyword baseload. What do we need for industrialization, for development, for everybody in Africa? You don't just need electricity to charge your cell phones. You need electricity to run a refrigerator. You need electricity to run heavy industries, to run restaurants and hotels and railways and other things that really need heavy demand for electricity. And that's that base load. We forget if we forget about base load, then we have a problem. That's why you see most European countries returning to coal. That's why you see the US opening up coal mines in the Appalachian, China and India using coal, because coal provides that base load. Natural gas that Africa has in abundance provides that base load, and it's abundant in Africa. So we need to be very careful. It's not just lights for cell phones, but for development. And that is the point that most people get to miss with this. So we do welcome mini grids. We do welcome some solar and wind. Think about the rural areas, villages where consumption is very low. You could then use mini grids and solar and wind in those areas. But when it comes to industrialization and big cities, don't forget African cities were built for 2, 3, 4 million people. Some of them, like Lagos, Nigeria, are already harboring about 25 to 30 million people. You have to understand that our cities are pressed. That's why we need more energy today. And I tell you with this, boys, and we're looking at a system where we got our young people all involved in AI, and we're talking about data centers. Some of these data centers are going to use not megawatts, but gigawatts. A big nuclear plant that you spend about $15 billion is going to do 1 gigawatt of electricity. Some of the data centers are going to consume it all. And if we're going to be competitive, we need to have more energy. Imagine Africa building 1, 2, 3, 4 gigawatts to solve our energy poverty problems and then takes us to the next generation. That's what we should be looking at. Energy additions, not energy subtraction with solar and wind.
I get that, NJ, because we've got on the news, Ethiopia is looking to monetize electricity for Bitcoin mining deals. That's about $120 million that Ethiopia is already looking at in terms of providing electricity that will be needed for artificial intelligence. So this is something we can talk about: artificial intelligence, digital economy, and all of that, digital technology. If we don't have that base load energy, that will be the backbone for it. Again, we need electricity beyond just charging mobile phones, as you said, and some torchlight to see in the dark and what have you. But so in terms of what the conversation will be, as you folks, you and your team get on the road to Paris next week for the Invest in Africa Energy Forum. So what will be the, what is the road to Paris looking like right now?
The road to Paris looks amazing. We're getting something that surprised me today. There's another group in London trying to obstruct what we do by hosting some Africa Energy Summit. I don't know why it's being hosted in London. It should be hosted in Africa, and they don't hire Africans to work with it. But I tell you this, they claim to be from Zimbabwe, but guess what? The Zimbabwe minister and finance minister and energy minister just announced that they're going to Paris. That is huge. Zimbabwe has been very good to Africa, big African country. But not only that, Namibia, Magishino, right in Paris. You look at Angola, big delegation. Nigeria, Minister of Gas, gonna be in Paris. Equatorial Guinea, the G Petrol, Minister of Energy, Congo, and Petroleum. Gabon just had a new minister today. He already called me. He's on his way to Paris. And we're looking at Libya and Algeria. Africa is showing up. But bigger than that, new Western companies like ConocoPhillips. And you're looking at the Exxons of the world, and also the ENIs and the BPs and the Total Energies. But renewable energy companies like EDF, and also some of the oil traders, they are all going to converge in Paris, having about 1,500 people. You know what? We're going to look at how to finance African energy. That is really important. And, sometimes you get caught up with all the noise, but, the hits and the sticks I get sometimes in this, I'm not worried about that. I worry about everyday Africans that look at me and tell me we don't have electricity. I worry about those young people that they talk to me in Namibia of them not having electricity in their villages, and somebody who is sitting in London in their nice fancy house eating their tofu and soy latte and all the nice good stuff, telling us that we can't have that. They can have that in London, but what we're going to do in Paris, we are going to focus like a laser beam on ensuring that everyday people in Africa, they have jobs, they have opportunities so that you don't have to cross the Mediterranean. We are going to promote licenses and promote a lot of drilling across our continent, and that's very important. They can talk about decarbonization in London. There's nothing to decarbonize in Africa. Let me tell you, you can't decarbonize what is not carbonized. The wealthy nations, the United Kingdom, should decarbonize. Africa is going to industrialize because we need that now. And we have to be very careful. This is Africa's time to grow. This is our time to tell our young people that we head in that clarion call for your development, and we're not going to back down from it. And you bet I would not be backing down from it. And I'm going to Paris, and I'm going to continue pushing African energy because our time is now.
So you're touching on some of the issues, and I want a bit of a drill down from you on what the discussions will be at the Paris Forum, and in particular, some of the deals that you think should be on the table. I understand that there's going to be a deal room, as it were. What's the size of what we're looking at? What are some of the biggest deals on the table that you think are bankable projects that some of the deep pocket investors across the world, Europe, Africa, elsewhere, will be interested in doing with Africa? We need this money that goes into energy infrastructure on the continent.
Person, you're asking for a lot of trade secrets before the time, but I'll let you know. I'll let you in on it. Our deal room is put together by one of Africa's most revered deal makers, Rene Awambeng, used to build Afrexim and Citibank and EcoBank. He's put together a multi-million-dollar deal room. Let me give you examples of some of the deals. There's going to be deals to do a big oil transaction that's going to involve about $400 million between an African company and IOC. It's going to be signed there. There's going to be a deal to finance refineries across Africa. It's going to be signed there. There's going to be a deal to really finance some hydrogen projects in South Africa. Rene Awambeng is putting that. There is a deal to trade crude oil coming out of African countries that is really going to go into refineries, not in Europe, but in Africa. There's going to be in a deal room. There's going to be deals to raise capital to fund local content development in African SMEs. That's my favorite, almost about $350 million. This African renowned deal maker is putting that and a lot more. But you know what's even better? He's going to open the door to a lot of young Africans with deals and Europeans and with deals to sit in their room and get the deal done. So it starts in Paris, and if it's not done in Paris, we're going to sign in Cape Town, and I hope you will be there to really cover those deal signings. That's what this matters to us. It's about results for everyday African and African business. That's why we've been able to get so many Africans supporting what we do at the chamber, because it's about getting them these results because they need it, and God knows we need it.
Very interesting, NJ, and we'll talk more about it a little bit more in a short while on this very lengthy conversation around refining and Afrexim Bank. But let me just touch on very quickly. We read from your office early today that the African Energy Chamber has created a membership platform. What is this platform all about? Why is it important? What's going to make it different from everything else we already know?
Oh no, we're going 2.0. This is something special. We already have a big membership base, but we decided that we're going to do something better. We want to enhance how we interact with our members, because you know what? When we build a strong community, we build an army. That's how we're able to resist anything. But you remember back in the day when nobody wanted to talk about drill, baby, drill? It was a bad word. It was a curse word. Everybody talking about it. It was a chamber that stood for that. Nobody wanted to talk about oil development in Africa. Everybody was talking about green energy and decarbonization. We at the chamber were seen as the mad people that still stood for oil. Don't forget that. When nobody wanted Africa's right to be defended in COP, the chamber stood for that. When nobody wanted to hire Africans in energy companies, we push local content. We believe that this network and this platform that we've had, and you know what? We've had so much support from African independence, especially in Nigeria, and everyday Africans, many young people, 4 million strong. We have to continue expanding because we understand one thing. If we bring a world-class platform with data that we've partnered with most of the major institutions like Reichstad, S&P, and Wood Mackenzie, put that in the hands of Africans, we are going to have fact and data-based decision makings with our government officials, but also with our members. So sometimes we stop some of the fake news and misinformation out there, because truth at the end is going to prevail. You know, like Carlyle would say, the truth crushed to earth will rise again, and that is exactly what our membership base is going to do. We're going to enhance it, but we're going to give our members something special, an opportunity to do business, an opportunity for them to network among themselves, but also to be the strongest lobby for business in our continent. Because when we have an enabling environment, when we have our members go out to their parliaments, their governments on their advocacy days to push for legislations that incentivize energy growth in Africa, then we are living to that true meaning of what we have to do. So we want to engage Africans day to day, brick to brick, barrier by barrier, to really go out there and really drive an army of Africans that nobody would ever see. It's an African Tea Party, baby. We're going to do it for oil.
African Tea Party? Okay, that's a good one.
Well, it looks like that's what...
Yeah, I love it. Whether it's tea or African coffee, as long as it's made in Africa, I wouldn't mind. But again, let's touch on this very important business. Afrexim Bank just announced, sometime last week, I guess, says it's pitching about between $3 and $5 billion into Africa's petrol import market. We know this is worth about $14 billion annually. Nigeria is trying to work its way out of that. A number of African countries are still doing a lot of petrol refining. So what's your take on how this refining financing program would work out? How much do we know? And why is it important for Africa?
I'm excited about it, and credit must go to Professor Rama and his team. They did amazing. You know, you start putting $3 to $5 billion trade facility, and this is not just for African traders, but also international traders. But a lot of African traders who have the opportunity to bring refined products and like LPG into African villages and communities. So we deal with our energy poverty issues. Don't forget 900 million Africans have no access to clean cooking. LPG can do that. What Professor Rama and his team at Afrexim have done is that they would give trade facilities for African entrepreneurs, small, mid-sized, big traders, to really be able to trade within ourselves. One of the biggest issues we've had is intra-Africa trade has slowed down. So that is going to drive intra-Africa trade Intra-African energy trade is going to grow up. We're going to bring LPG products like LPG and even fuel and petroleum products to everyday people across our continent. That is really going to relieve a lot of stress that we see. But what is even more better? We're going to create jobs. A lot of people are going to have so much job and expand prosperity. We're creating a new era of prosperity across our continent that is going to make us even stronger and better and guarantee our energy security and put us on a path to energy independence than energy dominance. That's what you're going to see by this happening. But even bigger than that, it would force us to go to the next level, dealing with our infrastructure deficits and saying, how do we go with that next level and say, let's fix our refineries, and let's finance more growth? Afrexim is committed to doing some of the 200,000 barrels of oil refinery in Cabinda and Angola around the Lubito area. That's going to be great. And we need to deal with our energy infrastructure point. So this is the first step. I think a lot more will happen, but we're opening markets. My only call to this is that I'm urging African governments not to hold back, not to put more regulations so that products don't move cross-border. So we need to have more cross-border transactions. If we do that and we facilitate that, it is really going to break down barriers and allow us to trade among ourselves, because we need to create African markets. 1.5 billion people in our continent. That is a big market that we must take advantage of and really deal with our energy poverty. You imagine how good it would be for Africa when we have 900 million people the access to clean cooking technologies. This is big. You wouldn't hear this at Africa Energy Summit in London. You wouldn't hear this at Africa All Week in Dubai. Only what we do here in Africa. And that's why we're proud to call Afrexim our partner in this, and we're going to continue working and supporting what they do.
Okay, so to begin to summarize and wind down this interview, are you bidding for the presidency of the new Africa Energy Bank as its pioneer chief executive officer?
Borison, if I take that job, you wouldn't have a chance to talk to me every time you want. So it's going to be painful for you, and you don't want me doing that. I think, you have to. I'd rather be Pope than take that job. I'm not doing that. I think that job is so important, and I'm happy Afrexim, and I'm unqualified for it. I'm not qualified. I'm a little country lawyer that just likes to work with getting people to be the big guys. I think Afrexim is doing an amazing job together with the African petroleum producers to find some of our finest, most qualified people to run that institution that's going to have a transformative nature across our continent. I think they are going to find some beautiful people, men and women, that can do it, build an amazing team, and really set out to raise billions of dollars that we need to really drive that. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create an institution that is going to transform our continent to a path towards energy independence, so that the young man in Nigeria that is hoping to get financing to drill a well, or hoping to get financing to develop a field or move gas across Africa, has a shot. That is what it means. But it's also going to be properly run with the best standards, free markets, and really, really ensuring that the bank is profitable for all those that put money in it. That's why we at the Chamber support it. I am confident in what is going on with Afrexim and the advisors at Price Waterhouse and everybody. I am confident they're going to do an amazing job. But you know what? There's one person whom you would never hear is the president of a bank. That is me. I don't do that. What I do, I will keep rattling the cages to make sure that Africa's energy is moving forward.
I'm sure you're going to be in Abuja, Nigeria, when the headquarters formally opened for this $5 billion Africa Energy Bank.
Oh, I'm coming.
I know you're going to be in Nigeria.
I'm coming. You're not stopping me. I'm coming. You don't listen. I'm visa free. I'll get in there any day. I'll be in Abuja, Nigeria. We got to support this. And where else could we have dreamed is that in Nigeria, one of Africa's largest producer is hosting these institutions. And this is an opportunity for us to show the talent, the beauty, and everything that is good that can come out of that country and our industry. And God bless Nigeria, and I'm happy that Nigeria is going to get this. But we need to push them a little bit to move fast on the bank and get it done and get it ready so that Africa has a fighting chance for the future.
Thank you, as always, for those insights on the energy sector. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Ayuk, the Executive Chairman at the African Energy Chamber. All the best and have a pleasant evening.